All right, welcome everybody to a new episode of Health Biz and Politics. I'm your host today, Jeff Cantor, along with Charles Froman. We've got a couple of interesting guests today, and we're talking about a little discussed area of healthcare, which is the medical savings accounts, but very, very important nonetheless. For those that are kind of new here, or just as a quick refresher, when you land at our site, you click on the Media Hub, and when you scroll down over here, you'll see the most important things. You can buy us a cup of coffee. And then I'm just kidding, but we would love if you did. And then meanwhile, if you scroll down a little further, you'll get to see who's on today's show, as well as the one we do on Thursdays. And then typically we'll show who's forthcoming, although we don't have much in there for the moment. And then the most important other key thing is the areas where these shows get posted. So we're on all four of these channels, so whichever your favorite one. Although if you do us all a great favor, would be to go to each one and subscribe, because the more subscribers, the more we trend on each platform. So if you'll do us that favor. So today is no exception again, that we're going to have some great guests. So I'm going to let Charles give us a little rundown here, and we actually have a surprise visitor as part of it. So Charles, if you would.
I would, Jeff, and thank you and welcome, folks. Health savings accounts was something that I, as a Republican congressional staffer in the 1990s, learned about in a hurry, because we were all thrown into the health issue with Hillary's effort for the government to take over the system. And it basically is self-insurance for the first few $1,000s of health care. And I met Pat Rooney from Golden Rule Insurance Company, who was the first one to really sell it. I met a lot of bigwigs who are really pushing it. It was incredible how fast it grew as a credible alternative to Medicare for all. And a congressman that I worked for became the prime co-sponsor of the first, what was then called the Medical Savings Account bill back in the mid-90s. And it pretty quickly was passed into law as a demo, even for Medicare in 1997. It didn't become permanent until 2007. And one of the first agents to actually sell it in the market to the retiree population was Ron Greiner, who is an agent extraordinaire. He's got a lot of influence with this decision makers in healthcare, even Trump. And he is really going to help today folks understand why it's not just HMOs that you want in Medicare, because just like with ObamaCare, they have serious deficiencies around networks that exclude the best doctors you actually would want if you suffered a catastrophe like cancer or heart disease. Really, you got to think about the MSAs as part of Medicare as a way to give you choices whenever you get sick, as also to help you with the out-of-pocket costs that really slam you when you're old. Some estimates have $100,000 in out-of-pocket liability that you face when you retire, which is just devastating. So with that, Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to Ron to say his piece about why so few folks know about this and why there's such a huge upside as people learn about the power of setting aside tax-free money for out-of-pocket costs in conjunction with Medicare. So Ron, take it away.
Please do.
Thank you for that kind introduction. I'm going to start with a MSA quote from Speaker Dennis Hastert from Sugar Grove, Illinois. The speaker said, "I figured out the difference between the two political parties talking with Hillary, and the subject was MSAs. Hillary said, no, no, no. MSAs put too much money in the private sector." The speaker saw the light. He said, it immediately crystallized in my mind the difference between the two political parties. We call it an MSA baptism. There's two sectors, the government sector, right, and the public sector, and then the private sector. That's the people of America. And ask yourself this question: can the people of America have too much money in their retirement accounts? The first MSAs between 1997 and 2004 automatically became health savings accounts or tax-free HSAs in 2004. Time Insurance Company, who had a majority of the MSAs, automatically switched the MSAs to HSAs in 2004. They're the same thing. Today, MSAs are for people over 65 and HSAs are for people under 65. IRAs and 401ks are old taxed accounts. MSAs and HSAs enjoy tax-free deposits, growth, and withdrawals. Amen. Total tax freedom. Money that's never taxed will last longer in retirement. The best tax cut is no taxes, and it's time for your MSA. Before we get into the Medicare Advantage MSA, I have a story for you. In February of 2017, in the second month of President Trump's presidency, Jan Michelson of WHO Radio in Des Moines, the boomer, it's the Reagan station, had me on the show to explain Trump Care. I explained that in President Trump's first address to a joint session of Congress, he said, we're going to replace Obamacare with tax credits and enhanced health savings accounts, or HSAs. I explained that tax credits mean the government buys, and enhanced health savings accounts means larger HSAs. Trump should have said, the federal government is going to buy your health insurance instead of your employer. Plus, the government is going to make deposits into your HSA at the bank. Your employers won't have to pay for insurance, so they can maximize your HSA. Then he should have said, when we lift the burden of health insurance off the backs of American employers, the economy will explode. That is Republican healthcare reform. That is the Medicare Advantage MSA. The government buys the seniors' insurance, plus makes a deposit into the seniors' MSA at the bank for first dollar coverage of anything medical, vision, or dental, or saved plus tax-free interest for future medical expenses. The Republicans who love government, and they're everywhere, they want government control. They all went crazy. Rand Paul said, oh, this is Obamacare light. The House Freedom Caucus went against Trump. DeSantis said, Trump's plan has too many somersaults. I have no idea what that means. Trump tweeted in March of 2017 that Freedom Caucus is going to derail the Republican agenda. Trump's plan would have eliminated a great big huge chunk of Medicaid. And Republicans lined up to protect Medicaid and block granite to the states so that the Medicaid companies could survive. That's Mitt Romney. They're still at it today. Just this morning, I got an email from the Paragon Health Institute, and I call it the Republican swamp for healthcare. It reads, Paragon is shaping the healthcare policy debate at 10:15 today at the House Education and Workforce hearings. Their policy brief is titled Small Business Health Insurance Equity Through Association Health Plans. They want to save the status quo. It's 11 pages of goofy propaganda. Let me help you. Association health plans was about individual health insurance and not group. In 1990, I was the state director for Iowa and Nebraska for the National Association of the Self-Employed, NASE, the largest association of self-employed individuals in America. It was run by a billionaire named Ron Jensen, who founded Life Investors in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Jensen got it established into law that when an individual association health product is approved in Alabama, it is automatically approved in 22 other states. So association health plans brought individual NASE products to the states more rapidly. If I was at the meeting today, I would ask the Paragon Institute people, because they're in Florida. In Florida, it is illegal for an employer to pay 1 penny of the price of personal portable individual insurance. Employers must purchase employer-based insurance. But if a hurricane comes in to Florida, right, causes billions of dollars in damage, and the small business is destroyed, well, there's no COBRA. The business is gone. So there is no COBRA. All employees of a small business lose their health insurance in the middle of a hurricane. It sounds crazy, but it's true. Secondly, Nebraska state employees, the biggest group in Nebraska, well, let me help you. Sick Nebraska employees with family insurance, if they get ovarian cancer and can't work, their eligibility requirement, 30 hours a week, they must pay a COBRA of $36,200 a year for their COBRA. In contrast, President Trump has another executive order for individual insurance, short-term medical that lasts up to 3 years now. And in Lincoln, Nebraska, for a 30-year-old couple and a child, the cost is $3,780, less than $4,000. So it's $30,000 less than what the state of Nebraska is paying. It would be impossible for a family to get the premiums as high as employer-based insurance. Okay, the Medicare Advantage MSA. Well, the last thing President Trump did was his executive order to improve Medicare with tax-free MSAs. Quietly and quickly, the Medicare Advantage MSA option has exploded in availability to every county in 35 states and the Washington, D.C. Seniors may enroll this October 15th, and on January 1st, 2024, the federal government will deposit $2,000 or $3,000 in their medical savings account at the bank, tax-free. A couple may choose $6,000 every January 1st. That's $500 a month. 50% of Medicare seniors in 2023 are paying for overpriced Medicare supplements, and the other 50% are on dangerous and deadly Medicare HMOs that pay nothing when a seriously sick patient goes out of network for treatment. At, say, the Mayo Clinic, voted the best hospital in the U.S. by U.S. News and World Report. Medicare Advantage MSA enrollees have the freedom to use the hospitals and physicians of their choice. It's federal law. Plus, many seniors save thousands more each year because they no longer need to purchase a Medicare supplement from the nonprofit AARP. I know an 82-year-old paying $900 a month for himself and his wife. AARP wants this money. They make billions on it, and they would never inform seniors about President Trump's no premium Medicare Advantage MSA. Is your mother on a dangerous Medicare HMO with a limited provider network? Tell your mom, with health insurance, we plan for the worst and then pray for the best. I would prefer you to switch to the Medicare Advantage MSA in case you get cancer next spring. We want your choice of doctors and hospitals that the MSA guarantees. President Trump's Medicare Advantage is the perfect solution to Medicare's pre-existing conditions problem. If your mom has cancer in Daytona Beach, she can't use the Mayo Clinic just 28 miles away if she's on a Medicare HMO. She may feel helplessly depressed. If she applies for a Medicare supplement from AARP, she's going to be automatically declined because of her pre-existing condition. Tell her, good news, Mom. Simply enroll in President Trump's Medicare Advantage MSA, and you'll be able to see any doctor in any hospital once again. Republicans' solutions work. Tell Mom, get your tax-free MSA at MedicareAdvantageMSA.com. Now, my partner, Lee Benham, he's here. He enrolled America's first Medicare Advantage MSA in 2007. And I actually wrote the first MSA in the original pilot test in October of 1996. The same month Fox News was born. I'm impressed how Fox News does not report Republican healthcare reform. And hopefully, Lee, you can hear from Lee because he is an expert. You should tell your parents to live longer, save premium, eliminate taxes, and build wealth. Governor George W. Bush in 1999 said at the Ames straw poll, I believe in more choices, more options, more freedom in Medicare, including medical savings accounts. I think President Trump should say, I made President Bush's Medicare dream come true. I hope that answers some of your questions about the Medicare MSA. And if you have any questions, I'll be free to help, and Lee's here too.
Well, let me expand on what you talked about, because you said I sold the first one, and the very first one was actually to my father-in-law. I mean, Ron and I go all the way back to, when HSAs were first sold. He sold the first one, but I think I sold the second, third, fourth, and fifth one in the country. So we've been doing it a long time. And when I saw the MSA come out, I actually sent Ron a postcard on it, and that's why we got involved with it again. The interesting part, though, is when I signed up my father-in-law, he was the first person on it in Omaha, Nebraska. And as soon as back then, it was the deductibles and contributions were a little different. So he actually got a $2,500 contribution into his MSA from the insurance carrier. And he was going, he was mid-70s, so he was going to the doctor all the time. And that's what we were talking about is overutilization back then, is how do you stop overutilization with Medicare and Medicare supplements? Like my mom, last year used to go to the doctor once a week just to have something to do. Well, when my father-in-law got that money in his account, he quit going to the doctor all the time because he looked at me. I go, well, why don't you just go to the doctor like you did before? He goes, well, that money in my account's mine. So as soon as that money is deposited into his account, they take ownership of it. It's their money, and they're only going to spend it when they need to. And that is a huge part of the MSA, is saving that money. And over a period of time, he built that money up.
I'll tell you what's going to happen someday in the future. We're going to have people that show up 65 years of age, stone cold broke, and they're going to start the MSA program. And by the time they die, 30 years later or longer, they're going to become wealthy, all federally funded.
Well, and I'll give you another prime example of this. My father, I just switched to this MSA last year. He's 82 right now, and he was on a Medicare supplement. I sold him his Medicare supplement. It was Mutual Omaha. But the MSA only became available in Arizona, where he lives, a couple of years ago. And his premiums with Mutual Omaha went to over $300 a month. And he, has diabetes, so he has supplies and all that kind of stuff. Well, it made a lot more sense to go to the MSA for him once his premiums went over the $3,000 threshold, because now he has a $5,000 deductible on the MSA. He gets his $2,000 deposited into his MSA account on January 1st, and he utilizes that money for his healthcare, because he really just has prescriptions and his diabetes supplies. Well, he actually had money left over in his MSA account, not a lot at the end of this year, but he had like $300 left over. He hadn't spent that much. And what happened January 1st, he got another $2,000. And now that he's not paying that $3,000 or $3,600 in Medicare supplement premiums, he's really almost $1,000 better off having this than having original Medicare and a supplement.
Sounds good. All right, let's open up for some questions. I see some hands are up. Mr. Froman, I'm going to kick it off with you.
Yeah, and as I put in chat, folks, if you want to click the raise hand icon, you'll find it under the reactions tab, or in some cases by the ... or more Zoom option. Got a few questions, so I'll just start with one and come back. How, Lee and Ron, is the MSA Medicare Advantage option devoid of limits from networks? I know there's a health savings account there for out of pocket, but there's still a Medicare insurance policy. Is the policy that combines with the MSA one that is not an HMO or does not have any networks? Or how do you back your statement that it restores choice for the Mayo Clinic?
I can take that one, Ron. It's truly the most powerful thing about the MSA is the way the law was written. It is extremely unique, and it does mirror original Medicare with a supplement, because by law there cannot be any networks ever with an MSA. And so you're allowed to choose any doctor or hospital in the United States that accepts Medicare payments. And I've gone round and around because it's so new. Some of the hospitals don't even understand it. Like here in Arizona, the Mayo Clinic sent out a letter about 6 months ago that says they are no longer accepting Medicare Advantage plans. And I have have a client that has to go to the Mayo Clinic because they are the only ones that are providing the service that he needs. And he's allowed to go there with the MSA. So there are no networks. You can go to any doctor or hospital, and that's truly the most important part of the MSA. You know, the money aside and the savings and everything else, it's having the choice, God forbid, if something horrible happens, to be able to go to any doctor, any hospital without any questions being asked.
Very good. Mr. Ford?
Good morning. Just a point in passing, you know, we keep talking about these vehicles like the MSA, the HSA, and patient empowerment, patient payment, and all that. And it always comes back to the same thing. It always comes back. We're going to keep what we've got passed at the national level that doesn't work, that promotes the problems and the waste and the inefficiency that our country is now literally going down the tubes because of. And now we're saying, okay, but we're going to pull this chestnut out of the fire and we're going to give this back to the people. Now, I'm sorry, as a 71-year-old male, that doesn't work for me. None of what I've heard this morning makes any long-term sense. You're saying, okay, we're going to empower people by giving them money from the government. Now, I'm sorry, guys, we need to grow up. We need to stop that. We have to stop the tax. We have to overturn the system. We have to do the things that have to be done to restore a free market. We need to be focused on that, not trying to take pennies out of the federal trove. And I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Oh, I would like to respond to that. Is that possible?
Sure, please.
All right.
I'm not a Democrat, so you fire away.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you have right now for your Medicare insurance?
I've got, I'm stuck in Medicare, which means that that's a direct violation of my civil liberties and rights and unalienable rights, that I'm forced into that program. That's problem number one. Then I have an Aetna supplement, which, you know, I pay $100 a month for it. I don't have drugs because I don't do drugs, but that's how I deal with the old age. I'm blessed with good health.
Okay, so the Medicare Advantage costs exactly the same as what you're spending, is what the government's spending on you. But instead of spending it the way that you've decided to have it spent, they've given the premium, the money to the MSA insurer. They raise the deductible to $5,000, and then the insurer takes the savings and gives it to the insured. So it doesn't cost any more. And these people that say that the government making the deposit, well, ask yourself this question. With the $35,000 that Nebraska taxpayers are spending on their group health employee plan, there's an exclusion there. How much does it cost the federal treasury on $35,000 that they're excluded from income taxes? It's more expensive than President Trump's tax credit for the purchase of individual insurance. So it's exactly the same thing. You have exclusions, deductions, and tax credits. So don't try and say that one's okay, but tax credits are no good. It's actually cheaper for the government to make the deposit into the pay the tax credits and then make the deposit into the HSA. It doesn't cost any extra, and we lift the burden of health insurance off the backs of American employers, and our economy would explode.
Well, I think let's go back to the original argument, which I mean I completely understand. So to understand how the Medicare Advantage programs works is the federal government is basically paying the private insurance companies, and it's different all over the place, but in general, it's about $1,100 a month. Okay, so every person that goes into Medicare has that burden anyway. They're going to be either paying the bills. So the Medicare Advantage, what they're doing with that program is giving money, $1,100 a month, to the insurance carrier to insure that person. And then you have the Humanas and the Aetnas and all those selling the Medicare Advantage programs. So your choice when you get to Medicare is you can either stay with original Medicare and buy a supplement like you're doing, or you can go to a Medicare Advantage program where you no longer have a supplement. You have the Medicare Advantage program and your Part Ds, and some of that's integrated. Now, what the MSA is doing is the insurance company is still getting that $1,100. Okay, then they have a deductible, just like an HMO or a PPO. They're going to have out of pockets on those as well. So the insurance company's set $5,000, but now that insurance company must take a portion of that and fund the MSA account on behalf of the insured. So there's no more money to. It doesn't cost any more money to do this. It actually saves the country money, saves the government money, because we don't have the overutilization that we have on the original Medicare supplements. So when you have original Medicare and a supplement, you have no out of pocket. Depending on what supplement you have, you probably have a Plan G or a Plan F, depending on how old you are. But if you have a Plan G, you have a little $250, $234 deductible this year on your Part B, and everything else is covered. Well, again, that promotes overutilization, because you can go to the doctor and never have to worry about anything. Go to the hospital, never have to worry about anything. If you were getting that $2,000 in your savings account every year, like you said, you're healthy, you don't have any prescriptions, great. You could have an actual asset building for you for future healthcare costs. People getting in this when they're 65 will have $15,000, $20,000 in their account. And that's by the time they get 70, 75. And that's what we want, is having money in your account for future healthcare expenses. So I hope that answers your questions a little bit.
Thank you.
Real quick,
response.
Jeff.
Oh, please.
Also, while Mr. Ford is fundamentally correct, we have sort of a libertarian bent in this program. Government's always going to fail. I see some long-term benefit from the tax credit approach. Maybe you can comment on this, because basically tax credits are going to, kind of like the HRA, you're replacing the group dynamic in healthcare with individualization of healthcare. And as employers under the Trump care scenario become just HSA funders, and with tax credits, workers have their own plans. And you're right, overutilization goes down with HSAs. Long term, could that younger age tax credit portion of the solution lead eventually to future reforms of Medicare? And that we kind of long term, we want to go back to the pre-1960s market, where you keep your insurance, your private insurance, when you're old. Comment on that. And then also, I don't see the Medicaid limit block grant, Ron, as mutually exclusive to the tax credit, because one is state, one is federal. If you tax credit the employer system federally, you still can work that solution with a block granted Medicaid program, because then it just becomes a state-by-state fight to limit Medicaid. Go ahead, Lee and Ron, on those two things.
Here, I just have to point this out. There's 11 Republican senators that are up for election in 2024. And if you go to these 11 Republican senators and you look at their websites, only 3 even will list healthcare as an issue. That sounds mind-boggling because federal health expenses are the biggest drivers of the debt. Medicare, Medicaid, ObamaCare, and the Children's Health Insurance Plan. And these 11 senators, only 3 of them will even list healthcare as an issue. You have Senator Rick Scott in Florida. He has a 12-point plan, and he doesn't list healthcare in the 12 points. It's just void. And if anyone should know anything about healthcare, it might be Senator Rick Scott. His company paid the largest Medicare fraud fine of all time. He was the one that was in charge of all the Republican senators running for election in the midterms that we just got through. And only three of these senators will list healthcare. And that is Mitt Romney, Ted Cruz, and Tennessee's, is it Marsha Blackburn? All 3 of them want to repeal Obamacare. The rest won't say anything. But then Ted Cruz and Mitt Romney both want to expand health savings accounts. So we have these like in my state, we have 2 Republicans running for election. They have 0 ideas on healthcare. So what we need to do is we can't put up with this. And with this Medicaid, there's 23 Democratic senators that are up for re-election in 2024. And all they can do is scream, expand Medicaid, expand Medicaid. The number 1 Medicaid company in the United States is Centene. They're also the biggest. They're the biggest in Obamacare and the biggest in Medicaid. They were the number 1 stock on the S&P 500 in 2018. There's giant money in Medicaid. And let me tell you, I'm sure these people on Medicaid today, if they could have their own insurance, that they could use their choice of doctors and hospitals, plus get an MSA deposit at the bank or an HSA deposit, they're not going to sign up for Medicaid. And I can tell you this about Medicaid. I just have to tell you that in August, there's class action lawsuits for Medicaid Centene. The one that happened last August is a RICO Act violation. This is a criminal organization. And what happened is they're taking $15 billion a year from Illinois, and they have the Illinois foster children. It takes over a year for a Chicago foster child to see a doctor with Medicaid, with the Children's Health Insurance Plan from Centene. And these Centene, they have the Hillary's Children's Health Insurance Plan from coast to coast. So do we really want our children on a plan, Medicaid, that if they get, my nephew, he had an osteoma behind his eye as big as a golf ball. We want our children to have their choice of doctors and hospitals should they become sick.
Well, I guess what we're talking about here is understanding the Medicare Advantage MSA, okay, where the government is buying the insurance and making the deposit in the MSA, allowing people to have the choices. This is a blueprint to age-based tax credits that we were trying to get passed in the early 80s. So age-based tax credits is, in my opinion, the way to solve majority of these problems.
Well, that was Trump in 2017.
Well, again, but
age-based tax credits.
Exactly. But no one can explain them. And that's the problem I think we have with our politicians now, is not one of them can talk intelligently about any of this stuff.
And these are the people that are making our laws.
So Lee,
Sadly,
if you could answer my question, if from the early 80s or whenever tax credits were passed, and that's a age group below Medicare, how well would that reform the system such that we could look at longer term reforms down the line on Medicare?
Well, I mean, I started looking at the numbers, and if you look at it, what an age-based tax credit is let's say you give $2,000 to people under 20. So let's just look at a 35-year-old couple with 2 children, right? So because they're 35, they would get $3,000 each. So that's $6,000. Okay, and each kid would get $2,000. So you're looking at $10,000 worth of tax credits, which is less than what every Obamacare out there is getting right now. It's also less than what employers are paying and the tax deduction the employers are getting on employer-based insurance. So it actually costs way less. So if you go to the free market now on the individual programs and the family has $10,000 worth of tax credits to go buy a portable individual plan, go buy whatever they want to suit their own needs. Most of them will, again, choose the HSA, but that, again, allows the employer to fund HSA accounts on their employees' behalf because they're no longer paying the insurance on the people. You will see a massive shift from employer-based insurance to an individual insurance, which is what has been the problem with our healthcare system for the last 50 years. Because of employer-based insurance has skewed the numbers of everything. People don't have a slightest idea how much it costs. They don't understand that it's not a benefit, that they're working for it. So it's just a different form of compensation. And if you lose your ability to work, you also lose your insurance. It's just insanity that we've been doing this for this long.
Well, it's true. If an employee gets so sick she can't work with ovarian cancer, the required 30 hours a week to get and keep her insurance, she goes to COBRA for insurance termination. Is that what we want? We want that when people get cancer, they immediately go to COBRA, right? So now the state employees in Nebraska have to pay $36,000 per family to survive cancer. You have to have a positive mental attitude. It's pretty damn hard to have a positive mental attitude when you're paying $36,000 a year and you lost your income. So wouldn't it be better if people had individual insurance that when they get sick, they can keep their insurance? I'll tell you, I had the national account with 7-Eleven stores before January 1st, 1997. And the very first 7-Eleven is Mike Foster in St. Louis. He enrolled. And when you have a 7-Eleven, you want to sell that business because it's open 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. You want to get out someday. And if you have a small group and you get cancer, you can't sell your store because you'll lose your insurance. Well, what happened was Mike Foster, first thing he does is have a heart attack, right? He can't, he's uninsurable now, right? But because he was on individual insurance, he kept his insurance. He followed doctor's advice and quit smoking, and his premium was cut in half. So that is the first MSA in St. Louis with 7-Eleven. It worked perfectly. He switched to individual insurance, had a heart attack, and then sold his store and kept his insurance. Then I went to Chicago and enrolled a woman named Mariana. And Mariana, she got ovarian cancer. Took 4 years to die. How can you keep your insurance when COBRA only lasts 18 months? You want to be able to have the security of personal and portable insurance. And why we should let some employer choose the insurance on your child, that makes no sense. Employers are trying to save a dime. But when it comes to your child, that's not the most important thing when you buy insurance. You're planning for the worst and praying for the best. You'd buy insurance on your child that you can use your choice of doctors and hospitals if that child became sick. Employers choosing the insurance on a child doesn't make any sense to me at all. That should be the guardian's responsibility, not some uninformed employer, like some doctor in a small doctor group, right? With 7 employees. Really, that doctor himself, if he got cancer and couldn't work, right, and he closed down his practice, he'd lose that small group insurance. I actually enrolled 2 doctors in Colorado, and they both got cancer. The first one, he had bone cancer, spent 6 weeks in an umbrella that with bone marrow cancer, with bone marrow transplants, and we spent $2.6 million. And he's an anesthesiologist. The very first thing that he did under his very first surgery was have a stroke. You can't be an anesthesiologist if you have a stroke. So he got to keep his insurance because I switched him to individual insurance where he was safe. What's sad is he still votes Democrat today.
Well, looking at some of these questions that are popping up, one of them is, why do we need insurance? What gets skewed on this health insurance issue is the actual definition. Through all the trees and weeds and everybody going back and forth, the bottom line, insurance, by definition, again, is spreading a risk over a large group of people for something you can't personally finance. And insurance is a transference of risk. Okay. And all you're doing is transferring, if you get sick, you're transferring your risk of having to pay all those medical bills to an insurance company who, again, is willing to pay those medical bills on your behalf for a premium. Okay. And that's underwriting. That's what's been skewed on all this, is understanding the definition of insurance. Do you really need a $500 deductible or $1,000 deductible or $2,500 or a $5,000 or a $25,000 deductible? It's a personal transference of risk which you lose. And are we in a free market? No, absolutely not, because employer-based insurance has skewed the understanding of why people are even buying insurance. People think they get benefits as they work. And we can go through that, that'd be a whole nother hour-long show understanding why the horrible part of employer-based insurance. But again, we're looking at a blueprint that is available today to make changes to how screwed up our system is today. Because Obamacare, in my opinion, is the worst piece of legislation ever written. The first time I read it, I couldn't believe something like this would pass, and then it passed, and it passed again. It skews what people need insurance for. And I guess that's hopefully to answer some of those questions that are popping up here.
Charlie Munger, yesterday, he's 99 years old. He's going to be 100 years old on January 1st. Well, he's a billionaire here in Omaha. He's Warren Buffett's guy, right? Warren Buffett, he is a big believer in Obamacare. But let me tell you, what's happening is Warren Buffett, he's taking the premium from his employees at Nebraska Furniture Mart. And as soon as one gets a head full of brain tumors and can't work 30 hours a week, they put to COBRA, which opens up a special enrollment period, SEP, and now the federal taxpayers will step in and give them tax credits and switch this sick employee to the federal taxpayer. And Warren Buffett laughs all the way to the bank. Of course he likes Obamacare. It gets him out of paying all these expenses on his sick employees that are too sick to work.
All right. There's another show right there. But let's keep going on some questions while we've got some time left. So, Mr. Westbrook.
Hi, it's Dr. Westbrook, by the way, but I only mentioned that because I have a couple questions, but a comment first. When you talk about networks, be careful. My network is really designed totally free market. Doctors determine their own fees. We publish their fees. That's the difference. So there are networks that are pre-authorized and discounted, not mine. Okay, so just to make that clarification. Question I have is, I have an HSA, I have had an HSA for a long time, used it very nicely until Medicare came along. Question is whether or not I can convert the HSA to an MSA.
No.
No.
The short answer is no. And that's one of the problems. Well, that's what Trump was talking about, and no one understood what he's talking about, but being able to expand them, because you should be able to transfer your HSA to an MSA. But right now, the federal government is the only entity authorized to make deposits into a Medicare MSA.
Okay.
But we wouldn't want to do that, Lee. We wouldn't want to do that because the only difference really between an MSA and an HSA is you can make payments or deposits into your HSA your entire life. And then after the age of 65, you can take the money out for any reason, buy a boat, and there's no penalties. It's the best account under the federal tax code. But that's different with the MSA.
Yes.
Because you take money out of the MSA, there's a penalty. So we would not want to switch. What we want to do is have, well, there's legislation right now to allow everyone on Medicare to have a health savings account and make deposits. And then what would happen is then they would have both. They'd have an HSA that they can make deposits into, and they would have an MSA that's funded by the tax credits, funded by the federal government.
Great, good. Second question. Everybody I talk to, including people who want association, health plans, small groups, that kind of thing, worry about, and corporations the same way, although I'm looking at self-insured companies, worry about the catastrophic part of it. So let's assume now that I've got, say, $10,000, $15,000 in an MSA, Medicare, an HSA, which I may spend down anyway, even though it's taxable. But the question is, if I were to go to an MSA, is there a catastrophic, you talk about $100,000, medical care is so expensive these days. And that's the problem, catastrophic. That's what people always ask me about, the catastrophic part.
Okay, the way the MSA, again, by law is written, is it has to cover 100% of whatever Medicare A and B cover. Okay, so you have a deductible, and I'm just going to use the $5,000 one. And you have a $5,000 deductible. The government provides $2,000, so your risk out of pocket on any given year is $3,000. After you hit that $5,000 cap on your out of pocket costs, 100% of everything after that is covered.
Wow.
Now, the other great part about the MSA, and this is what you can use your funds for your HSA, is when you purchase a Part D to marry it with your MSA, you can still use those funds to pay your co-pays on your drugs and stuff like that as well. So you still can utilize the HSA. But Rana's right. There's a huge penalty on taking funds out of your MSA versus your HSA once you turn 65.
Right. Gotcha.
There's a little follow-up to his question. If you have that big health issue and you pay that $5,000, what happens when the new calendar year begins? Do you owe that $5,000 all over?
Yes, it's a January 1st to January 1st deductible. Now, the people aging in, let's say you age in October. Oh, sorry about that. Let's say you age in October. Okay, that $5,000 deductible is split up into quarters. Okay, so you're still going to have your $3,000 out of pocket no matter when you join. So, like, I signed somebody up here just last October, and it worked out perfect. His deductible and his contribution are all lowered. So he still has a $3,000 out of pocket. Okay. But January 1st, he turned right around and got another $2,000. So in October, he got a $500 deposit, but his deductible had dropped from $5,000 down to $3,500. So his risk was still $3,000. But then January 1st, he got another $2,000. Now he has $2,500 in his account within 4 months.
Okay. Dr. Montalvo?
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out everything that's going on here in terms of So what you're saying is, and I agree with Charles in terms of a lot of what he's saying, because I'm not one to use drugs at all. And I'm just hearing right now that the MSA can only be used within the Medicare program, meaning that I can't take it and say, I want to go to my favorite chiropractor to get chiropractic care.
Well, you can use the funds for that. The funds that are deposited in your MSA, what you can utilize them for is the exact same as the HSA. So even though Medicare might not cover it and it's not covered under the insurance, you can still use those funds for chiropractic or anything.
Massage therapy, homeopathic care.
A lot of homeopathic care, yes, as long as it's approved. Again, the IRS publication 502 and 969 walk us through what is actually deductible under the MSA and the HSA. So you can use those funds for anything to do with healthcare.
Right. Now that's the only reason you can. So even if you're building up this account, and let's say you end up coming up with, like, I just turned 65.
Okay.
And of course I was, again, I'm like Charles.
You're forced into Medicare.
Yeah.
You're also forced into buying a Part D when you're eligible. Otherwise, you're going to pay a huge penalty if you don't.
I'm paying $14.90 a month. I got the cheapest I can get.
Yeah.
So how does that compare in terms of how this MSA would work in my benefit, even though I don't want to do this, but in my benefit as opposed to with this Humana Advantage plan.
Okay, well, right now you have a Medicare Advantage plan with Humana. Is it an HMO or a PPO?
I think it's let me see. I think it's an HMO.
Okay, so you're underneath a health maintenance organization where you must go to doctors and hospitals on that list.
Right.
If you don't, you have zero coverage. Correct?
Right.
Okay. The difference in the Medicare Advantage is now you can go to any doctor and hospital that accepts Medicare. Okay. The premium is the same. You're probably paying nothing for that HMO, correct?
Yeah, so $14.90 a month.
Okay, so you're paying next to nothing for it. Okay, so you have the HMO. What's your out of pocket on that? Is it $32.50 or right around $45? The HMOs are usually a little bit less out of pocket than the PPOs, so probably around $3,500.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Okay, and it depends on what state you're in, but that's about what you're paying. So you have
I'm in Florida.
Okay, so you have a $3,500 risk right now today. Okay. If you get sick, you're going to spend the $3,500. They're going to nickel and dime you with $300 copayment for days 1 through 5, or however they designed the program in your county.
Slowing down with pre-authorization.
Exactly. So the difference here is there's no premium. You don't pay anything for this as well, right? So you have a $5,000 deductible, but now you get $2,000 deposited in your account that's growing tax-free. Then if you don't use it, you don't spend it, it's going to roll over next year. All right. So there's your $3,000 risk. So your risk is the same no matter what, but you have upside potential if you are healthy and don't use this to continue to keep that money in your pocket.
Right.
And now you also get to go wherever you want. Now, because prescriptions aren't covered underneath this, the MSA, you then buy a separate Part D program, which you can probably buy for $5 from Aetna or Humana. I think Humana's is $5. I think Aetna's is like $7.50, somewhere around there. And I'll look.
What's Part D?
Yeah, it's a Part D. But you can.
What is Part D?
Part D is prescriptions under Medicare.
I don't need prescriptions. That's the whole thing.
Okay, well, if one day you do, that's why you marry this with whatever Part D program you want. So you buy the cheapest one, and if you get sick, you can always, during open enrollment next year, choose a better one.
Okay.
So you get the cheapest one for $5 a month. You got $2,000 in your account. You don't use it every year. And a perfect example of, I've had enough clients on this. One of my clients called me up just before this open enrollment was going on. And he goes, well, I got $10,000 in my MSA account right now. He's a 75-year-old retired baseball player. So still in great health. He goes, I want to move from the $5,000 deductible to the $8,000 deductible because I want the $3,000 deposit now. And that's the beauty of this, is having upside potential instead of wasting money on these insurance programs.
Right.
When I was on a Jan Michelson show in 2017, Jan Michelson, he talked to everyone trying to be president of the United States. I mean, you have to go through Iowa. And he was an MSA freak. And he had me on the show. He had a stroke. So he didn't interview that group that Trump was running for president because he had a stroke. But he came back for just a couple of shows after Trump was elected and invited me on. And so I was discussing this with him. And he said that with his stroke, what he did was he went to China for therapy. And I said, well, I hope you use your HSA funds for your travel expenses because that's a qualified medical expense. And he said, of course I did. Of course I did. So and I think that what we have to realize is that Iowa, 50% of everyone in Iowa in a nursing home is paid for by Medicaid. And the baby boomers are the oldest ones, 76 years old right now? They're just entering into the nursing homes. We need for people to save so that they can be self-reliant, because I don't think the government can take care of all these baby boomers,
No.
Right? And the rising costs of healthcare. People have to be more self-reliant. And there's a bill right now, the Health Freedom Act from Congressman Chip Roy, who's a hero of mine, and he wants to change health savings accounts so that anyone can have it, delink it from insurance. That's very smart. Everyone should save for retirement health care needs. And then he also wants to increase the amount that can go into an HSA, $12,000 for a single, $24,000 for a family. And when people are saving that kind of money, right? If you're 25 years old and you put $24,000 a year into your HSA, when you turn 65 with compounded growth, I think Albert Einstein said that was the 8th wonder of the world, right? Compound growth. You either pay it or you earn it. Well, we in America, we've decided to pay it. We have $32 trillion in debt. So what we need to do is have people save for themselves and be more self-reliant, because the government can't take care of everyone in the future.
That's a great place to stop because we're running out of time. So I like that little summation there. Real quick, just to let everyone know, we will have all of the contact information and the credits for this show. And I definitely want to thank you guys for being here today.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Somebody talking about the MSA for once. It's amazing.
During last year's annual open enrollment, there wasn't one news article in the United States about Republican healthcare reform and President Trump's MSA in Medicare. Not one article. And that's not right.
It's a tragedy. Well, thanks again. And we'll pick this up another day, because there's obviously, we just scratched the surface.